And next we are going to have a talk on FOCIL from a researcher from the Robust Incentives Group at the Ethereum Foundation. Soispoke. Big round of applause.
Watch EOF fade away and stall. By-cashed every spec till it hit the wall. Won't repeat that fate. Won't pretend it's fine. FOCIL's what we need, and we need it on time. When they dodge the call and they second guess, that's a chain. What it wants, yeah, the answer's yes.
Hi everyone. What a theatric entrance. Shout out to Sina that actually came up with the song. I thought it was really cool. And I am not Bartek, but I will try to give a talk about FOCIL today. Let's see how that goes. I mean, if it's going to be a while, we can replay the song, I guess. Just like, what? Yeah, I mean, you can talk too. I mean, I can also just start talking and... What? Yeah, but I can do the first without the slides, I guess. Okay, all right, let me try this. I think the slides are not needed for the first part, hopefully. But okay, yeah. Who here heard about FOCIL? Just to get an idea. Okay, nice. All right, cool. So yeah, I'm gonna be brief then, but I did want to get you guys up to speed and maybe start with like a bit of context on like the history of censorship resistance on Ethereum. So at first, you know, back in the days, we just had validators, and the validators were, it was kind of nice because they could just like do all the things we asked them to do, which is, you know, proposing blocks, building their own blocks, attesting to blocks, and all of like the validators could basically do anything. And that was very nice because that meant like the censorship resistance properties of the network will actually be dependent on the number of like independent nodes you had on the network, which is, I don't know, very core to like trustlessness, censorship resistance, permissionlessness, and everything. So that was good, but then something happened, and that thing is MEV, and so it stands for maximal extractable value. And basically MEV is the value you can extract by ordering transactions in a block, or like inserting some or removing some, and you like can pack your block in a way that allows you to extract like a lot of value from it. And it turns out, so I mean, if you guys are familiar, like sandwiches, front running, back running, all of this is basically MEV. And so the sort of like annoying thing about this is that it's actually, you need to be quite sophisticated to do this well. And to build optimal blocks, you actually, yeah, need to like have like, I don't know, beefy machines and run a ton of like combinations to find like the best ones. And so we ended up having a bit of a problem because you have now like a sort of, oh nice, separation between validators that could be sophisticated and like really good at this game and validators that wouldn't be able to be good at this game. So you have like a difference in the rewards you get from MEV between validators. And that's obviously bad because it means, you know, if you keep doing that, you will have like a big centralization force, and you obviously don't want this for your validator set. So what to do? The solution Flashbots people and then EF researchers, of course, like came up with was PBS, so proposer builder separation. And so the idea was to say, okay, like this role of like building blocks and ordering transactions can be completely separated from validators, and we're going to get these new kind of nodes, and those nodes are like called builders, and they're going to be really good at doing this. And then how are validators going to get the blocks from them? Well, there's going to be an auction for each block, and so builders compete with each other and try to outbid each other, and then all validators have to do really is just like pick the block with the highest value and propose it to the rest of the network. So this is proposer builder separation. This is what we have on Ethereum today. MEF Boost, if you guys have heard of it. And I think it's nice. Like I still think like the idea is actually valid and nice. Wow. But the problem with this, yeah, no. What is nice about it is like it actually kept the validator set decentralized, which is obviously something we want. What is not so nice is that the centralization forces we talked about were actually really, really strong. Yeah, and basically like stronger than we thought they would be, I think. So now we have like, if I'm being very nice, 3, but like really 2 huge builders building like more than 90% of the blocks on Ethereum. And so why is that bad? Like, you know, they're still competing with each other, like they build like valuable, optimal blocks. Validators still get good MEV rewards and are unsophisticated. The obvious problem is censorship resistance. Because if you have like these 2 massive builders building like 90% of all Ethereum blocks, if they just like decide they don't want to include your transaction for any reason, well, they don't have to, right? And then what happens is like, if your transaction as a user, for example, is censored by these 2 big builders, you have to wait like 10, 12, 15 blocks until you luckily end up having a local builder that is not reliant on these 2 big builders to like include your transaction. So you degrade your UX by a ton, and it's not that hard, right? Like you have to bribe basically like two parties that are like not huge companies either. It's pretty easy to bribe them, I think. So yeah, I mean that's obviously the big problem. And I think slides are going to be a bit needed here, but I'll keep going, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. We'll do a Q&A, okay. Sure.
Yeah. Hello?
Anyone has any questions so far?
Yeah. So wait, first up, everyone knows how hard it is to present without slides, and this has been amazing. But while we have some technology hiccups, does anyone want to ask any questions about what's been talked about so far? Who's going to be the guinea pig?
Let's work.
You got anyone?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. So, what's FOCIL?
What's FOCIL?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my next slide. FOCIL, yeah, stands for Fork Choice Enforced Inclusion List. The acronym is a bit stretched, but and it is like the solution proposed to sort of like solve the problem of having these 2 big builders and a bunch of validators. What it does really is like it lets validators that are still decentralized impose constraints on these big builders. So how it works is like you have validators, you choose 16 of them every slot, and what they're going to do is like each of them is just going to build what we call inclusion lists. inclusion lists are just like lists of transactions they are seeing in the public mempool. And then they are going to send these lists over the network, and the builder will have to see these lists, right? And basically what the builder has to do is like, you have to take all these lists, take the union of all transactions across this list, and the builder has to include these transactions in its block if he wants the block to be canonical. So attesters are going to see the same inclusion list, basically, and they're going to do the same union of all transactions. And when the block like comes by the next builder or proposer, they're going to like see like, okay, did he actually include all the transactions that I saw? If not, I'm just not going to vote for its block, and it's never going to make it on chain. So it's really a way to allow the decentralized set to regain power over like block construction and allow multiple proposers to give additional input that the builders have to just like, yeah, comply with.
I guess a follow-up question would be like, as a normal user, how does it differentiate? Like, does it look at transaction history and it's kind of like, okay, you're clearly like doing MEV and stuff, but this is a user op, so now we're going to make sure that it's in that inclusion list. Like, what's the criteria for inclusion?
So yeah, that's a good question. So basically what the validators have to do is like they look at the public mempool and they see any transactions, and they order it according to some naive rules, like you can take like priority fees or like time spent in the mempool and like all these very simple rules, and all of them they include it. And if they are honest, like that is like, you're gonna get like perfect censorship resistance, right? Because like they're gonna include every transaction they see in the mempool, and the builders will have to like include it in its block. What's really cool about FOCIL is like, even if like 15 out of 16 people also want to censor your transaction for some reason, you only need one to be honest for the whole mechanism to work. So you have like a honest minority assumption, which is really cool because that transaction, will be part of the union of all transactions across ILs. So that's why it like boosts censorship resistance like crazy, and it gives like extremely good inclusion guarantees, basically. Oh, I think the slides work.
Clicker right there.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yes.
So those were my beautiful slides.
Woo!
Yeah, this is the mechanism. Okay, let me just like recap. You have like the includers here. They build lists. The builder sees them and has to include these transactions that are in the list in its block. Otherwise, the attesters that are here just won't vote for the block. So yeah, pretty simple. Yeah, and then that comes, I don't know. It feels weird sometimes for me to like just like say why censorship resistance matter, because I feel like trustlessness and censorship resistance and permissionlessness are like sort of like the core reason we are building blockchains in the first place. But I think censorship resistance particularly is about like guaranteeing equal access to block space for everyone. It's about like only relying on protocol rules to decide who's going to make it on chain or not. And by only, I mean like really only, like you don't rely on any external information to make your choice. Like you ensure that everyone that submits the transactions to be accepted by the protocol like actually gets it. No matter where they are, who they are, what they want to do, it just gets in. And it has some, okay, I took some examples because sometimes it can feel a bit abstract, but it's also really important from the protocol's perspective. And sometimes like people don't get that, and because like FOCIL feels like a defensive sort of vibe, like we protect the protocol or whatever, but it actually allows scaling. Like without FOCIL, like it's going to be like very complicated to scale without completely degrading the censorship resistance of the protocol. And the reason is very simple. Basically, if you scale, so you increase the gas limits, or you go to ZK VMs and you have to also generate proofs for your block, what you do is like you increase the load on the builders, right? Like you need to build bigger blocks, or you might also like need to actually prove that these blocks were valid. If you do this, like the small local builders I talked about that are now like basically completely upholding the censorship resistance properties of the network by themselves. I mean, we're gonna see less and less of them just because like not everyone has access to a beefy machine, right? Like not everyone can afford not to connect to the dominant builders and be completely altruistic and like miss out on like the MEV rewards. So the more we scale, the less we will have like local builders probably, and the more reliant we will be on the two dominant builders. And if we don't have FOCIL, that means like we will slowly or quickly see the censorship resistance properties of the network that are not great today, but like degrade even further, basically. So we really need FOCIL in so we can actually aggressively scale while like maintaining some censorship resistance. It's such a cool foundation. Nah, that's a bit technical, but like it does. I think we are moving to a world in which validators don't do everything anymore. That's clear. Like now you have builders. With FOCIL, you have includers. We also want to like separate the role of being an attester to the proposer, so you can like sort of like preserve the consensus-related duty and sort of like shield them from MEV externalities. And FOCIL is like a first step in doing that, and we need FOCIL before we can build the rest of like this sort of like specialization of nodes. So yeah, it's also like important for the future. What about institutions? Yeah, I don't know if you saw Danny Ryan's talk and also Vitalik's talk yesterday, but they gave like cool examples about like why institutions care. What they hate is like counterparty risks. So they hate like to be potentially having someone screwing them over, right? And if you don't have FOCIL, it's quite easy to do, right? Like you're a big, large institution, you're like, okay, I will bribe these literally 2 companies so they don't include the transactions of my biggest competitor. What you do is like you slow down the UX of your competitor by 10x. It's pretty effective, and I don't think it's like that costly to do. So I think if we want to safely onboard institutions, we also need something that guarantees their transactions will be included. Yeah, you can do all sorts of like weird stuff, right? Like you can manipulate the market by just imagine you censor all transactions that are like sell orders for a given token. It's obviously bad. And institutions are like, probably don't want that. Yeah, for L2s, it's cool. Like, so shout out to Luca Dono, who's looked into this, and you have like very cool specific niches why FOCIL is important. There was a post by Vitalik a week or a few weeks ago on like shortening the withdrawal windows. And I think FOCIL allows you to do that way more because basically it reduces the cost of submitting your first challenge transaction to the L1 by a lot. And that alone allows you to basically reduce the exit withdrawal window, which is better for UX, for interrupt, for a lot of things. L2s can also build on the infrastructure that FOCIL provides to build more robust forced inclusion mechanisms, which is known to be quite a bit of a pain for L2s right now. So, I don't know, it's also another thing that's cool. It will be also very important if we get to native rollups. And then, yeah, I guess for users, I mean, I said quite a lot already, but basically, for me, FOCIL is also like the great sort of like equalizer. It means like if you're like a single individual user behind your computer and you want to, I don't know, buy ETH with stablecoins or whatever, you have the exact same inclusion guarantees as like a huge organization trying to rebalance its portfolio or whatever. You also have some quirky niche cases that are like important, I think. Imagine you use Aave and there's someone that censors your transaction to top up your collateral so they can liquidate you later. That's also quite bad, and that's also why you need FOCIL for users. Yeah, I mean, I think the list can go on and on and on because just like inclusion guarantees are just like important. Okay, yeah, one thing I want to finish with, and it's very crucial, I think, right now, because yeah, generally I feel like everyone likes FOCIL, and I don't want to like be super or like overly positive, but like people do like it. The question right now is more like when do people want it in the chain? And there are like quite stark differences. And one thing I get a lot is like, oh, but there's not much censorship on the network right now. Do you think it should be a priority or whatever? Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you think about it for a minute, you're like, sure, I agree. Like, there is not much censorship right now on the network, but like, if there was a massive censorship event on Ethereum, and that's a risk, like, it's always a risk, it would be terrible right now, because like, it will basically affect the sort of like narrative around Ethereum being this like credibly neutral layer everyone can transact on. Like, I don't know, it will be pretty bad, I think. Like, if something happens and we don't have like the protection needed to make it okay, then I do think there is a sort of like a big risk for Ethereum, and then you have to wait for the next hard fork to ship the solution to a problem that already is live. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like a sort of like healthy situation we want to be in. And yeah, then you have a lot of support from core devs. You have an EIP that's more ready than any EIP. Other EIPs, I think, like it's been worked on like by 7 clients, like 5 CL1s and 2 EL1s, and they are interoperating with each other. Like it's pretty good in terms of progress and like having client adoption. For the first time for Glamsterdam, we also like explicitly asked the community what they wanted to see in the fork and everything, and there was a lot of support for it. So now the arguments for not including FOCIL in the next fork are really basically about fork cadence and fork discipline, which is basically now we need to ship a hard fork for Ethereum every 6 months. It's very important because it gives some assurances that Ethereum can ship and stuff like this. I think it's fine. I agree it matters, but for me, like, I would be fine like if the fork gets delayed by like a couple of months so we can include FOCIL as fast as possible. I do think there's another argument that's for complexity, like you don't want to have too many features interacting with each other in the fork, and I get that. But I feel like if that's the only reason why we don't want to include FOCIL in the next fork, then we need to at least SFI it, like schedule it for inclusion in the fork that comes after. Like we need to have like guarantees that we will ship this at some point, because I don't think it's going to get easier to ship that. And so, yeah, that's why I think we should do it as soon as possible, basically. And if you want, to support this or FOCIL or whatever, like be loud, like come on forums, come on ACD, like say why you think it's important. And I think, yeah, the sort of like continued support for the community is very important for EIPs, and we do listen to what everyone's saying. So yeah, please keep supporting it. Thank you.